Omnis cellulae e cellula. Well, this famous Latin phrase, which was actually spoken by the pioneering pathologist Rudolf Virchow way back in 1855, translates to all cells arise only from pre-existing cells. It's such a simple, elegant statement, but honestly, it completely revolutionized our understanding of life itself. It tells us that there is literally an unbroken chain of cellular division connecting every living thing on Earth today, stretching all the way back to the very first sparks of biological existence.
So welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to be unlocking the fundamental unit of structure and function in all living organisms. We're talking about the cell. And I want you to think of the cell not just as some tiny microscopic bubble, but actually as a bustling, highly organized microscopic city. I mean, it's got a command center, power plants, waste management facilities, and even strict border security. By understanding exactly how this microscopic city operates, we can really grasp the very foundation of biology, medicine, and of course, your own body's health.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the discovery of cells, the 3 cell postulates, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes, organelles, and finally, transport and division. Let's dive right in. Section 1. The discovery of cells.
For thousands of years, we literally had no idea this entire hidden realm of biology even existed. The big breakthrough? Well, it actually came from the physics of light and glass. Our major milestones really kick off in 1665. That's when Robert Hooke published his book, Microscopia, where he detailed his observations using a simple microscope. Not long after that, a Dutch draper named Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who actually learned to grind his own remarkable single lenses that could magnify up to 270 times, looked at some pond water. And he made a staggering discovery. He found modal, living things swimming around in there. He delightfully called them animalcules. So it was really these technological leaps in optics that directly drove our biological understanding, which eventually culminated in the unified theories of Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow in the 19th century.
But before we dive into those unified theories, here's a quick piece of trivia for you. Have you ever actually wondered where the word cell originally came from? The answer takes us right back to Robert Hooke in 1665. When Hooke was examining these super thin slices of everyday bottle cork under his microscope, he saw a multitude of tiny, empty pores. And the repeating structured pattern of these little boxes reminded him of the layout of a monastery. Specifically, he thought of the Latin word cella, which referred to the small rooms that monks lived in. Now, Hooke didn't actually realize he was looking at the dead, empty cell walls of plant tissues at the time, but his poetic naming convention stuck with us forever. Section 2. The 3 cell postulates.
So building on Hooke and Leeuwenhoek's incredible visual discoveries, biologists eventually realized they needed a framework, something to unite all these random microscopic observations. And this was a massive paradigm shift in science. You see, for a long time, studying plants and studying animals were completely separate disciplines. But in 1838, botanist Matthias Schleiden suggested that every single structural part of a plant was made of cells. And then, just 1 year later, Theodor Schwann stepped forward and proved that animals too, despite having tissues that were super fragile and really difficult to study, were also fundamentally composed of cells. Together, they essentially unified all of biology under one single brilliant umbrella concept.
From their combined work, the classical cell theory was born. And you can really think of this as the absolute constitutional law of biology. It relies on 3 simple tenets. First, whether you're a massive blue whale, an oak tree, or just a microscopic bacteria, you are composed of 1 or more cells. Period. Second, the cell is the fundamental, most basic unit of structure and function. And third, which ties right back to our opening quote from Rudolf Virchow in 1855, all cells arise only from pre-existing cells by division. This actually put the final nail in the coffin for spontaneous generation. You know, that old Aristotelian idea that life could just poof, magically appear from inanimate matter. Yeah, that was finally put to rest.
Section 3. Prokaryotes versus eukaryotes.
Now, if all life is made of cells, you might be wondering, are all cells exactly the same? Well, not quite. There's actually a massive architectural divide. Prokaryotes, like bacteria and blue-green algae, are kind of like the villages. They're incredibly tiny, just 1 to 10 microns across. They don't have a well-organized command center. Instead, their single chromosome just kind of floats freely in a poorly defined region called a nucleoid. And they totally lack complex internal membrane-bound structures. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, these are the megacities. We're talking about an amoeba, an onion cell, or the very cells making up your own body. They're much larger, around 5 to 100 microns. Plus, they feature a highly well-defined nucleus surrounded by a protective membrane, they contain multiple chromosomes, and they are absolutely packed with specialized membrane-bound buildings called organelles.
Section 4. Organelles, the cellular machinery.
Okay, let's actually zoom in to one of these eukaryotic megacities and explore the dedicated cellular machinery that's suspended in a fluid medium called the cytoplasm. Inside its thick outer borders, the fluid cytoplasm is filled with distinct, specialized, membrane-bound compartments. Because just like a real city needs power plants, waste disposal, and essential government to survive, the cell completely relies on these various organelles to stay alive and do its job. Let's look a bit closer at 3 of the most important ones.
First up is the nucleus. This is City Hall. It's the brain or the command center, and it's typically the most prominent organelle, accounting for about 10% of the cell's entire volume. It's surrounded by a double-layered nuclear membrane that's dotted with tiny nuclear pores. These act like strict security guards regulating what molecules can enter and exit. Inside, swimming in the nucleoplasm, you find the cell's master genetic blueprints. Yes, the DNA. It's stored as thread-like, coiled structures called chromatin. The nucleus also houses the nucleolus, which is this dense structure that synthesizes the RNA needed to build ribosomes. So every major activity, from protein synthesis to cell division, is regulated right here.
Next, we have the mitochondria, famously known, as you probably remember from science class, as the powerhouse of the cell. These rod-shaped double-membrane organelles act as literal power plants. Through the complex process of cellular respiration, the mitochondria convert biochemical energy extracted from the nutrients you eat into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And ATP is the main energy currency of the cell. So whether your body is firing a nerve impulse or you're contracting a muscle, it's the mitochondria churning out over 90% of the ATP required to actually make that happen. Our third vital organelle acts as the city's extreme waste management system, the lysosome. These are sphere-shaped sacs filled with highly acidic hydrolytic enzymes. Their whole job is to pull in cellular debris, external waste, and even foreign pathogens and completely break them down. But they carry a pretty dark nickname, the suicide bags. Why? Well, if a cell gets damaged beyond repair, the digestive enzymes inside the lysosome can actually burst out, causing autolysis. That means it effectively digests and destroys the cell itself from the inside out, just to protect the rest of the organism. Pretty intense, right?
Section 5. Cellular transport and division. So we have this incredible internal infrastructure, but a city cannot survive in total isolation, and obviously it has to grow eventually. So how exactly does a cell mechanically interact with its environment, and how does it reproduce to pass its blueprints onto a brand new generation?
Well, for interaction with the outside world, the cell relies on its outermost layer, the plasma membrane. Think of it as strict border security. It's what we call a selectively permeable membrane, meaning it allows only specific substances to pass through while totally blocking others. One of the primary ways materials actually move across this barrier is through osmosis. This is a really specialized physiological process where water and dilute solutions pass across the membrane to perfectly balance the internal requirements of the cell with the surrounding environment. It keeps the internal pressure perfectly regulated so the cell doesn't just shrink up or burst like a balloon.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final concept, cell division. When it's time for the city to reproduce, which, remember, proves Virchow's rule that all cells come from pre-existing ones, the nucleus totally takes over. That loose, messy chromatin network inside the nucleus tightly condenses into distinct, short, thread-like structures called chromosomes. These chromosomes, which are packed with DNA and proteins, are carefully duplicated and divided so that an exact, flawless copy of the hereditary information can be passed on to the newly formed daughter cells. And this reproduction happens through processes called mitosis, which is for general growth, or meiosis, which is for sexual reproduction. It is just a flawless molecular dance of replication.
Which really brings us to a final thought. From Robert Hooke's simple quark observations centuries ago, all the way to mapping the dizzying complexities of the nucleus and mitochondria, we have come a very long way in understanding the fundamentals of life. But cellular biology is vast. Genetic mutations in organelles like lysosomes cause severe human diseases, and errors in cell division, well, that leads to cancer. So if a single microscopic cell is the foundational building block of everything we are, what kind of unbelievable medical breakthroughs could we achieve when we fully master its hidden machinery? I really hope this explainer has illuminated the microscopic cities working tirelessly inside you right now. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, stay curious.